cool. Cool. All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of the Diverse Podcast. I'm here this time with Ian Nkwocha, who has successfully landed a software graduate role with Capital One, which firstly, congrats for that off the bat.
Thanks.
And I'm super excited as well because Capital One are one of our main partners. So always great to see members of our community land roles with them. And what we want to do today is just help someone else get a job at Capital One as well. So they tend to hire for interns, placements, graduate schemes across strategy and software engineering. So if you're interested in one or two of those areas, then this is the podcast for you. And we're going to try and help give you some insights and some tips for the application process and help you get hired there as well. If you look at the comments or the description, wherever you're watching or listening, we'll have a link to their company page on our website where you can sign up to get notified first about their opportunities that they showcase with us. So without further ado, Ian, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone? Let us know a bit about yourself, what you studied and what job you've got at Capital One as well.
Yep, sure. So, yeah, my name is Ian. I just graduated from University of Nottingham back in August of 2021. I did a computer science degree, no masters, no industrial placement or anything. I really like computer science, so that's why I ended up going into it. I couldn't really think of anything else I wanted to do, and so far it's going all right. So yeah, pretty exciting.
Yeah, I mean, the way the world's going as well, it's probably the best possible area you could go into. So good choice there. So why Capital One then? So why were you keen to start your career with them?
Right, so I've answered this question so many times, so I think I've got it down now. So first off, it's in a pretty strong industry in that it's Capital One's a bank itself, but in the UK it's just a credit card provider. But as you get older, more and more people start to have credit cards, so it's like had quite a lot of growth. For me personally, I was looking for somewhere where they were hiring people who were more inexperienced and were training them up. So I was looking mostly at grad schemes in general, and the Capital One grad scheme is quite strong. There's a lot of scope for you to choose what you want to do. You get to pick 3 work rotations over the 2-year program, and they can be in different areas like cyber, data, or web development, things like that. So yeah, it was all really encouraging. And I guess also having a look on the website, they were pushing for more diversity in the workplace. They made that a big point about that, and that's something that like resonated with me personally. I was looking a lot at whether companies were putting an emphasis on that on their sort of promotional materials and stuff. So yeah, I just thought Capital One was a pretty good company. I guess the salary's all right too, but really it's not really what you want to focus on. It's more the company itself, because that's what you spend more time working than you do getting paid. So yeah.
Interesting. Okay, yeah. So fantastic learning and development opportunities, diversity and inclusion. Obviously that's a big part of why they're working with us, and something they've really pioneered across the board as well in America as well. So that's good to know that that's something that young people are focused on and it impacts their decision about where they want to work as well. So that's good to know. And then so yeah, really broad in terms of the experience you can get then, right, across web development, data, cybersecurity. So that's another big draw, right? Because I think typically you have to pick one of those, right, for your first role, I guess.
I think it's good because there's actually more than that, but you get to pick 3, and you do one year placement and then 2 6-month placements. So you really get a wide range of experience, and then you can just choose what you really want to focus on, and it's quite good.
Awesome. Yeah. And is there anything in particular you're really excited to get started working on in particular?
Yeah, it's probably have to be the data science part. That's kind of what I like the most about sort of technology, this whole tech sector. I'm gonna be doing a master's in that as well, so I thought, get some experience on the board first and see how it goes.
Awesome. And brilliant. Yeah, that's really exciting. And so that could be across anything, right? Data to do with, I guess, Capital One customers and credit card decisions.
Yeah, and I think it also influence how they do their strategy in the future. So I think you'll get to work a little bit, maybe not like straight away, but in the future you'll get to work with the strategy team and wider across the organization, and the things that the sort of the work that you do will shape how the company goes if you do it right, I guess. So yeah, it's quite exciting in that regard.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff. So let's walk through the application process then for anyone who's listening or watching who's keen to get one of those internships, placements, grad schemes across software or strategy. Well, this will be the software process, but let's take it step by step and see, if you've got any tips for each stage of the process and what you think maybe you did well as well, I think would be useful. So you start off with, well, I'll run through it all quickly. So you've got the initial application with an online assessment, then there's a one-way video interview, then there's the virtual assessment center, and then there's a final interview after that. So if we take the first step, then the initial application and the online assessment, what was that like?
Okay, so the application itself, you just need to consider why you're applying to Capital One, and be ready to answer that. And I was actually surprised to know the people who handle the rest of the application process, they don't see your CV until I think until after. So I found when I got to the end, the senior manager was like, I haven't seen your CV, so you're gonna need to talk me through this, and I was quite surprised. So but apparently that's quite common. I think I'm guessing they'll have one of those automated applicant tracking systems. So when you're writing your CV, you need to make sure you have sort of those keywords that will really show that you're a strong candidate. So talking about how not just that you worked on something, but maybe that you collaborated on something instead, maybe that you suggested new ideas that were taken forward, and things like that really sort of heighten the impact of what you're doing and really sell yourself. And then for the sort of online interview, it's a one-way interview, so they just show you a recording of someone reading out some questions, and then you just got to answer that, and it's really strange. But yeah, I think again focusing on your motivations for working for Capital One, which you can show by doing your research on the company, having a look at the financial statements, just even reading the website itself. There's a lot you can get out of just reading what they actually offer and talking about maybe one thing that you really like about them and what you want to work on. That will probably be the strongest thing you can do as a new applicant.
Brilliant. And then there's I should just mention as well for the initial application, there's no minimum sort of grade requirement or specific degree that they require, and they're sort of really, and throughout the process, testing actual skills that you're going to be used for the actual role, which is really good. It helps remove any, it makes it more inclusive, I think, because it's going off your actual skills rather than where you're from or what you've done in terms of your degree or where you've studied. And so there's also the initial online assessment as well, right? There's a coding assessment. Yeah.
Yeah, that one's it's not easy, I'm not gonna lie to you, but they don't expect you to be getting full marks in anything. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't even get close to full marks. So it's done through Code Signal, which is an online sort of coding assessment thing that they use, and they give you some programming exercises that are concepts that you'll have learned if you've done computer science in school, and a few that you'll learn if you do it in college. But then there are also things that you can just teach yourself as well, and you can practice on the website at any time. You just make an account, it's free, and yeah, then it will give it a more sort of general application. So I can't remember what I did specifically, but it's probably best that I don't say that anyways.
Yeah.
But
But in terms of to prepare for it, though,
Yeah.
what would you recommend people do to practice beforehand, or what do you do to practice beforehand? Because you're right, it is. Well, it's good that you didn't get full marks and you passed. That's good to know, right? Because if anyone is going through it and a couple of questions are really tricky, you can still pass without getting single thing right. But yeah, is there anything you'd recommend going into that in terms of what to practice?
So I think number one thing that I'd recommend is there's another website which is the same as CodeSignal called LeetCode. It's more programming questions, and there's this list of 75 questions called the LeetCode Blind 75. I think it was the news site or whatever website called Blinds. They curated those questions, and it just goes across a range of programming concepts. And if you can do sort of the medium difficulty questions from there, you should be good for most programming online programming assessments. Even if it's for like Google or something, it's a really big help. So I'd recommend anyone, if you can have a look at that and start working through it. I haven't finished all of them, but what I was doing is I was working through each one. If I couldn't do it, I'd like copy the solution down, and so I could have a look at it later and sort of write notes on what they do to make it work and how you come up with that sort of solution. So really you're sort of reinforcing your learning rather than just trying to get through the things that you already know how to do, if you know what I mean. I think just repeatedly going through programming questions online is the best way you can prepare. And they also do practice tests on CodeSignal as well, so you can get used to the format. I guess also one final thing is if you're doing an assessment through CodeSignal, it's proctored, which means they record your camera and record your screen. Not for every company, but I think for this one it was. So it's best if you can't remember how to do something off the top of your head, maybe write some notes on it beforehand, like, I don't know, traversing a linked list or common things that you'll hear like that. It's good to have notes because you're allowed to have some notes in it. So yeah.
Good stuff. Well, I hope people know what that means, because I, for one, do not. But no, I mean, I think online assessments, I get a lot of questions about that because it's where a lot of people struggle. But to be honest, the only real thing you can do is practice. I'm constantly looking for another silver bullet, but I don't think there is one. And I think a lot of people ignore the practices that they get through in the emails. And I get it. You're a student or you're working or whatever, and you've got lots to do, and you just want to get it done quickly so you can get to the next stage. But I think there's a high, I don't know the stats, but I imagine the people that actually practice beforehand statistically do much better. And so as you mentioned, then the next stage, so once we passed the online assessment, we're through to the one-way higher view video interview stage. And so I think they mentioned there they're really sort of looking at your motivation and your communication skills. So it's not necessarily all about the content of your answers, which gets a big focus, but the way in which you answer your questions. So you want to be really engaged with the camera and using your hands and that sort of thing, making eye contact. And I think a lot of people get a little bit scared about the video interview stage, but you've just got to remember that the person on the other side of that camera, and it's easier for me because I've met them, and I think if you go to one of our events and you hear directly from someone who is doing the hiring, then it makes you feel much better. But they're essentially just someone who wants you to succeed in that interview. So I hope that helps a little bit. And I actually heard from one employer that they mentioned that some applicants now, as a bit of a tactic, they've started getting a friend or family member to sit on the other side of the camera. So rather than just talking to the computer, they're like, talking to their mom or whoever they're comfortable with on the other side, which that might be worth trying out. At least practice that way and maybe see if that's something that works for you. But anything more on that before we go to the next stage?
I guess for me, just don't be nervous. Like, there's literally no reason to be nervous. Like, I'd like to think of it as you're just talking to yourself. If you're not good at presentations, which I'm not great at presentations either, so you wouldn't get nervous if you're talking to yourself in the mirror. So just try and think of it like that. Also remember that it's not the end of the world. I actually got rejected from Capital One for the internship and the placement, and now here I am on the grad program. So it's you get more chances to keep going, and it's really just, it's no big deal if you don't make it, because you can try again or you can try somewhere else. No matter what, it will be fine. So yeah.
Oh wow, so that's interesting. So it didn't work out with the
Yeah.
internship. And for anyone who doesn't know, typically that internship is like a 10-week internship that you can do over the summer, and then you've got 1 year placement, which you do as part of your degree for penultimate years, and then you've got obviously the graduate scheme. Oh, okay. So you didn't manage to get that internship and placement. Talk to me about that then. Like what kept you going? Why did you decide you wanted to keep applying and yeah, you weren't deterred by that. That's interesting.
Um, I honestly just, if when I got rejected, usually if I get rejected by a company, I just forget about it completely. Um, Unless I get some good feedback, in which case I'll keep the feedback and just forget that I got rejected by them. Also, I think in this past year, I put a lot of effort into improving the effort I put into applications, making sure I'm being thorough with my CVs, making sure that I'm rehearsing my answers, maybe not even out loud, just but knowing what I want to say. It's because I guess when I was applying for the internship and the placement, I wasn't preparing anywhere near as much as I was for my job application. So I think just get serious about preparation, and then you'll do much better in some of these interviews. It's not a silver bullet, and you're not going to get an interview for everything, no matter what. But you'll stand a much better chance if you prepare well.
When you say prepare well, what kind of do you remember? I don't know, hours or weeks or days that you put into it. How much time do you sort of think?
There's not actually that much time. I think for each stage, maybe just 1 or 2 hours if of concentrated preparation or researching things they do, and maybe writing up example answers or questions. I did have a massive sort of document. Actually, it's not that big. A document of just interview questions, and I wrote some practice answers using examples from my life. And doing that helped me remember those examples so I could apply them to more questions. And it was yeah, I think it keeps you calm so you can come across better in interviews, and it's a big help.
Awesome. No, that's really, really impressive for you to persevere. And I think anyone who's listening, remember you can keep applying. I think sometimes we apply to a company and you're not successful and you think, oh, they're out of it now. But you can actually keep applying, year after year if you think that's the right place for you. And I love what you did is in terms of don't take it personally. You look at it and you think, okay, take on some feedback. How can I be better? How can I take a little bit more prep time? It's not even that much, it's a couple of hours deliberate preparation beforehand, and that then makes all the difference in the world. So that I think is really impressive and really inspiring to anyone else who maybe has already applied to Capital One in the past and not been successful. And hopefully after this interview you can go and make the difference. So yeah, we've got the virtual assessment center next, which is, well, who knows, by the time you listen to this or apply, and it might be in person, but for now, assume virtual. So we've got a strength-based interview, presentation where you showcase some coding skills, and you've got the pair programming section as well. And of course, don't tell us too much about the ins and outs of the actual assessment center, but I guess a couple of things. What do you feel you did well then, sort of on the day? Was there anything that you kind of look back and think, I really smashed that?
So I guess for the presentation, can I even remember? Yeah, so I didn't do too much in terms of, graphics for the presentation. I focused more on content, and also I didn't load the slides with the content. It was more just a quick bullet point list of some things I wanted to talk about, and I spoke about them. It was weird doing it over the internet as well, but that's fine. Yeah, I think for a presentation, there's one sort of main structure that you want to follow, that just for any presentation ever, and it's 3 stages. You tell someone what you're going to tell them, then you tell them, and then you tell them what you told them at the end.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you follow that sort of structure, it's a bit less daunting trying to sort of section out your presentation, so you know what you're going to talk about first, and then you can just go into the content and focus on that. And yeah, it's good to choose stuff that you're very familiar with to talk about. Don't try and, if you worked on a group project, don't try and say, oh, I did this thing when actually someone in your group did it, because they will ask you questions on that. And if you can't explain, then it's yeah, it looks really bad. And they do tell you that it looks really bad. So avoid that at all costs and you'll be fine. If you talk about something that your group did, you can just say, I didn't quite work on this. I was more focused on this thing, and they're okay with that as well. Because then they know what to ask you about, and you can really show off your expertise and really like sell yourself. Also on the assessment day, they do have a Q&A session as well with some of the recent grads, so you can look forward to that. I got to speak with someone who I think she started only 2 weeks before then, so she didn't know too much about everything, but it was still helpful. You could talk about with her about the dreaded imposter syndrome, which apparently everyone gets. And you really don't need to worry about that. I think with the job I'm currently working in, it's something that I also experienced, but it's fine. Everyone gets it. Everyone's willing to help you with it, so you'll be all right. Anyways, back to the the pair programming is what I'm going to go with next. Yeah, I was quite nervous about that because I'd actually never done it before, but they do run workshops on pair programming on Meetup, so they explain how to do it. And yeah, so it's good to know what you need to do. You need to focus on sort of explaining yourself while you're programming and asking questions only to clarify and not really to try and get a solution out of the person you're working with. I think on the day they'll give you some requirements and you can refer back to them at any time. And I remember we were doing it through Zoom and I had to take over their computer and do the typing. So yeah, it's not ideal. It's a bit slow, especially if your internet's a bit slow. It's a bit awkward, but they're sort of completely understanding about that. And so you don't need to worry if you make mistakes while typing or anything. You don't need to fret about that at all. Yeah, and also apparently you don't need to worry about finishing as long as you can explain what you're doing and you're talking through what you're doing. You don't start typing without saying anything. That's the number one tip I'd give you. Don't start typing without explaining what you're going to do next, because then they just have they have no idea, and it's not really what you're meant to do in paired programming. Because you're a team, you're not just working on your own. So yeah.
Yeah, explain that for me a little bit for me, who's a bit of a complete novice. So there's two of you involved. So one of you's writing a. Why don't you just explain it to me, Ian?
Yeah, sure. So the idea is you have one computer and you're both using that same computer. So you don't have one person off on their phone or searching on Google or whatever. And you have this problem. So what you do, you both talk through a solution or a way of thinking in like to approach that problem. And then you come up with once you've come up with how you're going to do it or solve it and how you're going to test it, that's when you start actually writing. And it's one person writing, and the person who's not writing can just help you out with, like, if you miss a semicolon, or if you mistype something, they can just point it out to you and just say, oh, you missed that there. And if you've come up with a full solution, or not a full solution, but you know what your next line of code is going to be, and you've spoken with your pair about that, then they can actually talk you through writing it, and that's okay. That's what I mean with how you're a pair. So like you're the hands and like the left side of the brain, and then there's like the right side of the brain, I guess. I don't know if that's a good way of explaining it, but
Yeah,
yeah.
that's cool. So it's like you're in it together. That's quite nice, actually. Yeah, that's really good. And I guess like any other assessment, you could both be hired for the role. It'd be interesting to see if your partner who got hired for the role as well, because I guess you've got to make sure you don't compete and you're actually just like supporting each other and trying to help each other, because they're going to want people that can collaborate well in a team, right? So
yeah. But actually, when I was doing it, it was me and one of the senior software developers, not me and one of the other applicants. I'm not sure if it's different in person, but yeah. So you don't have to compete with anyone, definitely not. And they're quite helpful as well. So yeah, it's good.
awesome. All right, that you went on a real roll there. That was really good. And then so the final round interview with someone in the team, I guess you're going to be joining most likely. And I'm guessing there you'll want to reiterate your interest in. I mean, this is just how I prepare, and we've got an interview guide as well. So I'll probably actually add that to the description as well. But if you sign up to our community, you'll get access to that straight away. And I guess you want to go into that, be really clear on why Capital One, why you want the role, and why you're interested in the industry and tech specifically for this role. Is probably the best way to prepare and to practice. How did you find that? Is there anything again you think you'd want to share for that stage?
Yeah, I'd say that is probably the easiest part of the whole process, because by that point you should know like what you want from the company. You'll have had a chance to talk to people who work there. You'll have like done a lot of research at that point. So if you don't know if you want to work there, well, I guess it's your final chance to really figure it out. But if you do know, then it's just more of just a conversation. It's nothing to be nervous about. Yeah, and it's more just questions on, if you were there, what would you be like? What would you be interested in terms of, they have a mentorship program, and so if you had a mentor, how would you want them to like interact with you? How would you want to work with them? Things like that. So I think what I was told in the Q&A on the assessment day is that if you get to that final stage, it's more likely that it's highly likely that you've got the job, as long as you don't, say, oh, I actually hate Capital One, I don't want to work here.
Yeah, that would be our top tip for today. Don't say that.
Yeah. But yeah, it's also not that long an interview as well, so it really does feel like a conversation, where I know a lot of companies say, oh, it's just going to be a talk, but really it's more just a monologue, from one person to the other. But that one was it was a pretty good interview. I don't think I have any explicit tips for that, because it's more of a personal thing to you. So okay, I guess my tip would be know your motivations, and then for working for Capital One,